Quarantine, week 3. Homeschooling 3 kids. Still trying to find time for projects. And for some reason, one of the projects on my mind has to do with things being encased. Things being stuck in something that fits really tightly around them. That's right, we're going to talk about scabbards. As anybody who does stage combat knows, fighting in a scabbard is a pain in the butt. Sometimes literally, sometimes if we're going literal, it's a pain in the ankles or whatever. Falling on them hurts. They flop around funny, they whack into things, they can get caught between your legs and make you do embarrassing sort of half-trip things. So anytime you can, you want to ditch that scabbard before you fight. Now what that means in terms of props and costumes is that sometimes the temptation then is to just not have a scabbard at all. And just tuck a bare sword into your belt, draw that out, put it in a frog, whatever. Which, you know, it's not ideal either, I think. I feel like not having a sword in a scabbard robs us of even the idea that it's at all sharp. We don't have that illusion even that this is a dangerous thing if we're just kind of strapping it into our belt or letting it flop around as a sharp and pointy thing. So in an ideal world, you know, if we're going into a duel or something, we can build in that time when we take the scabbard or the sword belt off and ditch it to the side. If we're in battle, you know, that's a different thing. If we know we're going into battle, then you can just have the sword already in your hand. You don't have to wear it, hopefully. But you know, sometimes scabbards are a necessary evil, whether it's just because it's worn as costume or because we need to see you put it down and do something else with your hands and then pull it out again. And sometimes our options aren't great for that. Period scabbards were often wood, which is awesome, but it breaks. And that's less than awesome because they're a pain in the butt to make. It's a time-intensive thing. If you can get or make leather scabbards, those are great. But the materials are kind of expensive. Leather can be pricey, at least good leather for doing scabbards. There's some gorgeous people out there doing custom scabbard work, but I sure as heck am not going to be able to afford that, let alone for an affordable rental for a theater company to go and take that out. I remember working on some shows where we were renting stuff from Weapons of Choice out in California, where we had these crappy sort of, I think it was aluminum siding or something that they were made out of, and they would bend all the time and then break, and they rattled, which was obnoxious when you're trying to have lines. You know, there's a lot of options and a lot of them aren't great. If you get swords from Cold Steel or a Cass Hanway, often they come with a scabbard, and that's nice. That can be a nice option. I think a lot of those are these days a synthetic, sort of like the skateboard wheel kind of stuff. You know, not all swords come with scabbards. A lot of our stage combat swords don't come with scabbards as a standard option. You got to pay extra for those. So I do spend, as a rental house, I do end up spending some time making scabbards for people who need them. One of our options then is PVC. Now, on the plus side, PVC is cheap and it's light and it's fairly easy to customize. A little bit of heat and it becomes soft and you can kind of squish it into shapes. Too much heat and it catches on fire and gives off really nasty fumes and does bad things. So there's a fine art to that. I do not go too exact. I don't have like a carefully temperature controlled oven that I use for PVC. I cook food in my oven. So I usually just do it outside of the propane torch and just kind of make light passes. It's kind of like toasting marshmallows, right? You go too long, it catches on fire, you can't eat the thing. But not enough, and it's not really a toasted marshmallow. So you want to find that area right. You know, with a marshmallow, you want that nice slight browning. Sometimes with PVC that works. I usually try and stop before it gets to that slight browning. But if it gets some of that slight browning, that's fine, and that can be one way to sort of make it look a little bit more like wood sometimes as well. So just as a couple of examples, this was some Civil War sabers that I rented out for a gig that they needed scabbards for. And these were aluminum blades. I think these were David Baker blades originally. I can't remember for sure where I got these. You know, just old cheap Civil War hilts. But they didn't have scabbards. So this would be an example of some of the kind of scabbard stuff that I do with PVC. And I attach some metal rings. This is a wire wrapped around the PVC. And then the bulk here is actually just silver hot glue. That's what I did to add or in this case, brass or gold hot glue to kind of give that little shape to it. Once I've shaped and fitted the PVC, that lets me kind of like glob the ends shut, as well as give it a little bit of relief for this, sort of shaping the things there. Now, this is not going to hold up in a close-up. This is not for your film hero prop. This is for your stage prop that's just going to flop around on someone's side, and chances are good no one's going to see it at closer than, 20 feet. And for that, I think it works fine. Right. And because you can heat mold these with a blunt sword like this, especially with aluminum where it's less about temper and it's nice and thick, while this is still soft, I can squish the blade into it, and I can make sure that it fits and let it cool kind of on the blade here, so that I can make sure that it's got that nice friction fit. It's not going to fall out, but it's also not too hard for an actor to pull out. So I have a pair of these now that did not have scabbards, and now they do. So that can be one option. And those were just spray painted silver. Often I want to make it a little bit fancier or more durable. So like this was a really early small sword scabbard that I did in PVC. And I just used some scrap fabric stitched up over this and a leather thing on the end. Here's one that a costumer decided they would put some stuff on. I had something else and they didn't like it, so they ripped my stuff off and put this weird fake leather crap on it. But, they were the customer, whatever, it's their prerogative. And then this was just my really quick and easy. This is just duct tape. You can get patterned duct tape, or silver metallic duct tape, things like that. And this is just for a light Schlager rapier blade. It works fine. It's not ideal. But the nice thing about this, it's got a fair amount of bend. If you fall on it, it's probably not going to break. It's not going to hurt your leg. It's got a lot more give than a wood scabbard would or a metal scabbard. And it's going to be a lot safer to work with. Now, part of why I'm talking about this right now is I've got this lovely sharp Angus trim long sword that those of you who saw the cutting practice video that I put up a couple weeks ago saw. And I got this basically at an estate sale for a steal. It was as much as I could afford to offer at the time, because I didn't want to completely rip the guy off, but I still got a really good deal on it. And I may end up selling this at some point, because cutting and sharps aren't really my thing, stage is. But I gotta say, it was a lot of fun hacking stuff up with this. But it didn't have a scabbard, and having a sharp, designed to cut and stab blade that did not have a scabbard seemed like a really bad idea. So I took some 1.25 inch PVC, and what I did with this was I heated it up, flattened it between two boards to try and make sure that it stayed straight. And I didn't want to heat this blade because this blade is tempered steel and it's got thin edges that'll heat up a lot faster. But I did find a piece of wood that I had that was about the same thickness as the thickest part of the ricasso of this sword. And so I was able to stick that in while I formed this. And then just to make sure that it stuck a little better, because it rattled around a little bit, this ended up being wider than the actual blade needed to be. I also put a little divot kind of towards the end here. And that ends up sort of grabbing the blade a little bit when it gets towards the end. So it gets a pretty good friction fit. And again, just a little bit more hot glue kind of up at the end, a little bit in the middle here, and on the cap. Hot glue, I'm really digging this stuff. I mean, it ends up being a little junky when you look up close, but it's durable. You can bang it up. It's soft. It's not going to scuff up or damage other things. And it's fairly easy to work with, and you can get it in lots of colors. And now this one I did not cover. I thought about putting some duct tape or something on it, but it's like, I'll just try something else. Why not? So going on in some prop forums, I'd seen a number of ways people had made PVC try to look more like wood. And so this is a mix of rough sanding, make sure all the text was off and that it was not shiny and would soak up stain a little bit better, and then scratching the surface to kind of imitate a grain. As well as you can see some of the areas where it got a little bit more burned when I was doing the heat shaping. And so this is then, I had one coat of wood stain that I had around already. And then I also used some leather dye that I had because it seemed to soak in a little bit better. And again, this is not going to work as your hero prop, but for at any distance for stage, that's going to look just fine. And this is, again, it's PVC, so it's got some flex to it, which is kind of nice. Not wobbly, but not going to crack the way that wood would if it got this thin and this long. And it does the job. So now I have a safe thing that I can put this in where it's not going to cut things if someone runs into it and grabs it wrong, if it falls funny. And I'm pretty happy with it for what it is. And if nothing else, it's certainly a safer way to store this sharp. This would be an example of a PVC scabbard I made for a single-handed aluminum broadsword, which with some copper metallic tape on the ends. And this is using the sort of wood grain duct tape, because you can just get this kind of stuff super quick and easy. Yeah, it's a little chintzy, and as it gets rubbed, you get to see the white through. On the other hand, it's really easy to just put another strip of this on and fix it up real quick. Whereas if you've got a lot of stain and layers of stain and paint and stuff, if you have to do touch-ups, that's a pain in the butt. Am I capable of doing fancier scabbards? Oh, sure. You know, this was one that I made for a backsword of mine that's 2 different layers of leather. So I've got the thicker leather and then a softer leather over top. It's got some shaping to it. I made the metal shape with a little floral thing there. I mean, yeah, I can, but it's a lot of work. And frankly, what I found is most of the time, it's just not worth it. The number of situations where I would want something that looks more authentic and is actual leather and steel are few and far between. And 99% of the time, I can get away just fine with using something that is PVC and duct tape and slapped together. And that'll hold up just fine. And what's more, I don't have to be too paranoid about it or too pissed off if a client does something bad to it, because I can always make more. PVC is pretty cheap and easy to find. And it's lightweight too, so it's not going to be too big a problem. It's weatherproof. If it gets wet, it's not going to have problems the way that leather can, and it's not going to hold that moisture against the blade the way that leather can either. So for a number of reasons, I've become a fan of these kind of easy plastic. Yeah, this was for one of these aluminum. I have a video from a few years back about tightening up aluminum hilts. This would be one of the kind I used in that. But, you know, it works. It does the job. And then just real quick, while I'm talking about them already, another category of quick and easy sort of stage or training expedient scabbards. This one still has the EPC symbol on it. If you have Boken or I've got some Starfire Katana that work with these as well. These are sold as Gulf separating tubes. So the idea is that when you have your golf bag, you drop some of these in and they keep your clubs from rattling into each other, I guess. I don't know. I don't play golf. But you can get them for like $2 a piece. And they're soft enough that they do kind of bend into shape. So this was a trick I learned ages ago when I was doing Japanese martial arts training back in college. Because some of the stuff that we were doing, you had to be able to practice doing a draw or counters to a draw, like where you shove the scabbard forward, so as they try and draw it, they can't clear it because it doesn't clear the saya, what would be the wooden scabbard. So, I mean, this was just a cheap and easy way to get something that you could use to approximate that, to practice your sword draws and things. And so I've used some of those for stage stuff as well. Just because I had some paper mache out that I was using for other things, I decided I'll also go ahead and see what would happen if I did some paper mache over that. I also had one of these tubes that I found on the street that looked all junky, so I kind of needed to cover it anyway. And so this is an example of one that just has some paper mache and then some spray paint over it. And it's reasonably durable. I could still break this fairly easily if I wanted to in terms of folding it in half. But, that's true of the soft wood that they traditionally use for scabbards too. And for most of what we would do on stage, that's decent, and it was super cheap. It takes a little bit of time with mache just because you got to let each layer dry, but it's really easy to do. It's fairly easy to do repairs if you have time, and it is durable enough that from here, that doesn't get crushed. Right? I can move it around a little bit even, and this is a leather belt rather than a traditional e-coat. So that's not bad. So I've got one more of these that I'm trying just out of curiosity. So here's one that's sort of mid-process and actually still really wet. But you can also get these polypropylene swords in this sort of chromed finish. And so I was just kind of curious to see if this would maybe be an option for some stage shows if I used one of these tubes and beefed it up a little bit. But like I said, this is still wet and I don't want to mess up the paper too much. So I'm going to put that back now. I've tried a number of other materials. In my first small sword that I made a hilt for, I made a scabbard out of copper pipe because that was what I had, but copper's expensive these days. And it's a lot harder to replace or to fix, and if it bends, it doesn't bend back as easily, and you get metal fatigue and things like that. Um, so, I've become a huge fan of this sort of just quick and easy for my rental inventory at least. Um, Heat-shaped PVC. Now you do want to do this outside. The fumes are kind of nasty, but it's a great material. And for those of us who don't have ready access to things like 3D printers or CNC machines or even a router to make that process of scooping out the inside of a wood scabbard easier, if you can find the right size of PVC and heat it up and just kind of shape it to fit, flatten it just enough, as long as you don't mind not having a nice distal taper or taper in either direction. As long as you're okay with a pretty basic cylinder that's just a little bit flattened, I found that this is the way to go. So hopefully that's helpful to somebody, and both in terms of knowing what you can rent from me and maybe somebody else who's out there trying to figure out what they can do for their show. If you have any questions or if you have any experience that you want to share, maybe you've tried making some of these. How'd they turn out? What worked for you? What helped? What kind of hardware do you like to attach to them to be able to mount them? Usually I just stick these in leather frogs, but it depends on the style. The saber obviously traditionally would have those two rings that you'd kind of hang things from. Maybe you found good finishing techniques or good coating to kind of cover the PVC with to make it look better. Let me know. I'd love to hear it. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, stay productive. And until next time, this is Kevin Inoue from FightDesigner LLC. As long as I can stay healthy and sane and productive, I'll keep putting out videos probably every week or two. If you got something you want to see, if you've got an idea, by all means, please let me know. Subscribe, give me a comment, shoot me an email. Often my videos come out of direct responses to inquiries that I get from clients. Right now, there's not a lot of clients because everything's shut down. So if you're just sitting around the house being bored and curious, let me know what you'd like to see, and I'll see if I can help you out. Thanks.